Welcome to Let's Argue with Jay Play Hard. I am your host, Jay, and today we are going to talk about the men's and women's college tournament. I'm back after a 2 week hiatus due to travel for my other job, but glad to be back with you all and glad to be back on the pod. It's just me today, so I'm just going to kind of give you my notes, the Elite Eight performances that kind of took my attention. But first, I just like to talk about this women's tournament. Let's give a huge shout out to the ladies, the coaches, the players, everyone who put this tournament on. I think this is probably the most entertaining women's tournament I have ever watched personally, but it kind of speaks to the state of college basketball as a whole, where you have the stars of the college game. They tend to stay longer on the women's side. That's why we've had a chance to build some of these rivalries, like the Iowa and LSU's that we're going to talk about a little later. But you have these young players like Juju Watkins coming out of nowhere, dropping 50 points. I don't think I've ever seen so many talented uh, guard players and wing players on the women's side in a long time. And so for me, it was just entertaining to see Caitlin put on that show that she put on last night. And we're going to get into that in depth here in just a moment. Um, but yeah, big shout out to the ladies, but the men, they also put on a show this weekend. Some of the standouts of those games were Alabama uh, going on their little Cinderella ride, beating UNC and Clemson, NC State. How can you not like NC State, DJ Burns and those guys? Really fun to team that's fun to watch. Then you got your powerhouses. You know, you got your Purdue's, Zach Edey drops 40 on Tennessee to get to the Final Four. We're going to talk about all of it here today. But first, let's talk about the biggest game on the slate. It was the one of any tournament of either one that I was looking forward to the most. It was Iowa versus LSU. And to me, this is Bird versus Magic. And I say that in the sense of either you liked one or you liked the other when those two were at their height. And I think Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, even though Caitlin got the better of her last night, I don't think this is the end of their rivalry. I think they will meet in the WNBA. I think they will be battling for years to come. And I think it's great for women's basketball to have a rivalry like that, to have stars like that. You know, I am one of those online that said, hey, we can't call Caitlin the GOAT until she wins. But last night is that performance, man. It's hard to um, put into words. It's hard to make an argument against her. But I will say this: the stage is now set. LSU, they'll go on to face UConn. Paige Buckers, who is also an excellent player in her own right. She dropped 28 in her regional final game against USC. We'll give her flowers a little bit down the line. But back to Iowa, because they are the darlings of the dance. Caitlin Clark drops 9 threes. She was in fuego from distance, also adding 12 assists, 7 rebounds. She really was a savant out there, just taking care of business. I noticed on the pick and roll early they were using Haley Van Leaf. LSU was she was the primary defender in that game, and she really struggled on the perimeter with the pick and roll. I think Iowa saw that early and chose to exploit that going into the second half, and it really made a difference. You saw a lot of wide open looks for Clark in the second quarter, third quarter, where she really got hot. They did make an adjustment I saw early and put I can't remember the young lady's name. I think it was PAO, but POA, excuse me. But that performance, when someone is hitting like that, you can't give them any space. I thought Iowa did a great job of creating space for their guards. Um, Kate Morgan, I'm sorry, Kate Martin, excuse me. She poured in 21 and 6, just creating space. A lot of wide open looks for the ladies in the second half, the Hawkeyes. But man, man, what can you say? What can you say? Angel Reese, I mean, she had 17 points and 20 rebounds in this game, even going down with an injury in the second quarter, coming back, battling back. I don't think those ladies have anything to be ashamed about. And I believe that her and Flajay Johnson will be back next year. So I think LSU, they're in a great place. Um, I can't wait to see them try to come back and finish Angel Reese to finish her career on a high note. I am an Angel Reese fan, admittedly. So I was rooting for LSU in this game, but you have to give credit where credit is due. Caitlin Clark is the greatest shooter not named Steph Curry right now. I mean, Jesus, 9 of 10 from three. She was unconscious. She had that killer instinct, and you could really tell that she wanted this game. Haley Van Leaf, big fan of hers as well. Senior, hard to see her go out like she went out. She had a tough, tough night. 2 for 10 shooting, only 1 for 6 from three. We're talking about a career 400-point scorer here. I know she probably wanted to do better for the Lady Tigers in that performance, but this is where the ball bounces. Great players show up in the big moments, and that's what Caitlin Clark did. Um, Switching on to the other side now, which I'm telling you, tail of the tape, Buckers versus Clark. This is this is big. I'm telling you guys. UConn, we know that they're a dynasty. Um, we know what they've done over the last 20 years, but in recent years, they haven't been as dominant, and I think that's because Butkers hasn't been healthy. Just remember when this young lady was a freshman, she was hands down the best player in the country. It wasn't close. And now she seems to be getting back to her full potential. And I'm just here to tell you, it was a heavyweight fight. Her, Juju Watkins, they both put on a show. Juju, she is one of my favorite young players in the collegiate game. She did break the freshman record for points in a season. She dropped 29 points, 10 rebounds in this game. She's a dog. She's a dog, and she will be back. But it was UConn. It was UConn's night. They kind of controlled it all the way through, which was surprising to me. UConn, they did go on a few runs to kind of separate themselves in the first half and the second half. But I'm here to tell you, Paige Buckers is legit. She is a wing player, as Angel Reese was a big, and you don't get to see a lot of that head to head with Caitlin. Caitlin and Paige are going to be going at each other in this game. They're both wing players. Legacies are on the line here. It's a big game. It may be the biggest game, not Iowa LSU, that you could put together. The stage is set for Caitlin to make her case as the greatest college player of all time. You got UConn, the most storied program in the history of the country. Paige Buckers, who many feel is maybe that number two player in the country. I mean, the stage is set, and then, and then if she gets through that, she has the reward of taking on undefeated South Carolina if they can get past the underdog NC State Wolfpack. Now, South Carolina, what do you say about the Gamecocks? Two straight undefeated regular seasons. I think they've only lost two games in the last 2 years. So I think that the Gamecocks will handle business and punch their ticket to the championship game. No disrespect to the NC State ladies. They've had an amazing season and they've got some great guards, but I just can't see them holding up for 4 quarters against that front line of South Carolina. I think the front line will dominate. The shooting is a lot better than it was a year ago when they failed to Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes. But man, man, if Caitlin gets past UConn and Paige Buckers, whoever wins that game, I think will have the reward of taking on just the most dominant women's team of the last 10 years. This South Carolina women's team, if this was Space Jam, just put this in kind of context here. If this was Space Jam, South Carolina would be the Monstars. Okay, you're talking about a WNBA caliber player at every single position. These women are tall, they are athletic, their shooting is better, and according to Don Staley, the coach, they have really been able to come together as a unit and hold themselves accountable, not just relying on their talent, but actually doing the small things. This, this team is for real and they're on a mission. I think Caitlin, the game she had against them last year, fueled them. And they are looking for a rematch. I hope I would. The competitor in me would most definitely. But this women's tournament has been nothing short of amazing. It's been nothing short of great. And man, just I it's not even over. It's not even over. Switching over to the men's side, um, I want to talk about NC State really quick. Now, if you listen to my live pick'em for the tourney, you know that I did have them going to the Elite Eight. But I think I thought the ride would end there. But after watching them dominate Duke, I think this team is good enough to beat anybody. I They are 9.5 underdogs currently on ESPN Bet. I think they're going to cover that. I think this is going to be a closer game than the experts think. NC State, they're playing with a ton of confidence in the way they dominated Duke in the second half. Really, really showed me that this team, they can go out there and play with anybody right now. DJ Burns, he's a load. He's a load. This is a huge man, and he's got skill set. He can pass, he can shoot. He's got the footwork. But on the other side, you got Zach Edey, 7 footer, traditional big man, like he's like your dad's big man, and he dropped 40 on Tennessee. Now, granted, Tennessee's defense isn't anything that struck fear in the hearts of anyone. They were more of an offensive team, but Zach Edey's legit. 40 and 20. That man had 40 points and 20 rebounds. That's Luau Cinder, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, for those of y'all that didn't know his birth name. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar numbers, you know. Um, Zach Edey versus DJ Burns is, if you like old school big man, if you like old school basketball centered around the big man, this is the game for you. But I do think NC State will cover this 9.5. I just don't see them being beaten by double digits by this Purdue team. Just how well they've been playing, and they've been playing with the playoff mindset for about a month and a half now. So I expect them to come out. I expect them to play hard, and I expect them to play confident. But I think Purdue wins in a close one. Switching over to the other side, we got Alabama and UConn. We talked about Alabama a little bit earlier, but I wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper into these guys because they deserve it, man. These guards are playing out of their mind. That kid Nelson, he really saved the day for them against UNC. The shooting is crazy. Mark Spears, excuse me, Sears is playing out of his mind, but they got a tall task in this UConn team. This UConn team is complete. They got 7 guys that I think will play in the NBA or the G League, and that's a tough ask for any team, let alone one that is kind of devoid of a traditional big. And I just think those trees down there for UConn, they're gonna do their thing. They're gonna crash those boards. You won't see many second chance points for Alabama like you saw against UConn, excuse me, like you saw against UNC and Clemson, because I just think UConn is so formidable up front that it could get ugly fast. It could get ugly fast if Alabama isn't hitting. I don't think they're going to get a lot of second chances to put the ball in the bucket. Now, moving on to the NBA. Joel Embiid looks like he's about to make his return for the Philadelphia 76ers, maybe as soon as tonight against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I know a lot of those Philly fans are going to be happy to have him back. Just to put it into words as to what he was doing before the injury, he was averaging 35, 10, and 5 So that the only player to ever do that was Wilt Chamberlain. So that kind of lets you know what air he's been playing in before that injury, and hopefully he can rev it up before the postseason. Because I am a fan of the Stars being in the postseason, even though it would mean bad news for my Miami Heat. Devin Booker. How about this for home cooking? You know he's from Moss Point, Mississippi, which is very very close to here in the Gulf Coast of Florida. But he loves New Orleans, man. His third straight 50-point game against the Pelicans. Something about playing the Pelicans just makes him go off. I don't know what it is. They said on ESPN he had about 40 friends and family in the building to watch him just fillet Brandon Ingram, Zion, and the Pelicans. But man, Devin Booker, that man can flat out score. The Phoenix Suns as a whole, man, they've kind of been disappointing this year. Well, actually, not disappointing. Disappointing is a kind of a strong word. I think they played as expected with the lack of depth on the bench. They did make some moves at the trade deadline that are probably still finding their way and being implemented into the rotation. I can't say that I watch Phoenix every night because they are a West Coast team, but I would assume that the rotations are still getting used to one another, or some type of adjustment is being made. So you're going to have nights like this where they're firing on all cylinders, and then you'll have other nights where they're not just on like they should be, like you think they should. Bradley Beal, he's been back recently, but he hasn't been there all year long. So I think a team that gets a full training camp, full preseason, and goes into the season has a much better chance of gelling than a team that's put together at the trade deadline. The Lakers kind of being the exception last year, but usually it's a team that gets a full healthy training camp that's a threat in June. Now let's move on to some announcements about the show itself. Um, Obviously, earlier I spoke about, the travel issues and not being able to post episodes as regularly as I liked over the last few weeks. I'm going to be making that up to you guys here in the month of April. So we're going to do a bunch of bonus episodes. I will be going live from Shades for the NFL draft later this month. That's going to be a lot of fun. But I apologize to you guys, and I will be better prepared next time I'm on the road to give you these little podcasts, these little drop ins. Even if I don't have a guest, I know that having a guest, you guys seem to enjoy that method a lot more than just me as a talking head. But obviously people have lives and real jobs and things like that to get them through. But we will have as many guests on here as we can. But in the meantime, I'm gonna give you as much coverage on these sports that we watch as possible. I just want to thank you all for supporting. It's been a wonderful, wonderful ride so far. And we're going to keep this going into summer and fall, especially in the fall when we have more sporting news, when more things are going on. I know baseball just started. Hopefully, we can get Larry back on here to talk a little baseball with me and guide us through the season. We'll see what we can do. He is a busy man over the summer, though, handling all those baseball tournaments. But it's just been a great ride. Thank you to Charmer Moore, Shane Davidson for jumping on the last few weeks and helping me out with this thing. And if you're listening and you want to, give some points about what your team is doing or what they should be doing or what they're not doing, hit me up. I'm on Facebook at jay.playhard. You can follow me there, and you can kind of chime in on the comments and on the post, and we'll cover it right here on the show. Even invite some of you on. So we've got some surprises coming up over the spring and summer that we're planning to make this an even better experience for you, the listener. And we just want to thank you for rolling with us and being patient. So, with that being said, I am going to cut this short and make sure you tune in to the Final Four this weekend, the men's and the women, because they are both putting on a show, lots of storylines, and we'll be back next Tuesday to talk about it. This is Jay Play Hard signing off for Let's Argue.